Bangladesh is witnessing one of the most turbulent periods in its recent political history, marked by mass protests, political violence, and sudden leadership uncertainty. Public frustration in Bangladesh had been building for months, driven by political repression, economic pressure, and growing distrust in the electoral process. Amid this unrest, protests spread across major cities, transforming into a nationwide movement demanding political change. Aftermath of the 2024 mass uprising. The 2024 mass uprising in Bangladesh began as a student-led movement and quickly grew into a nationwide protest that forced longtime leader Sheikh Hasina from power. While the uprising marked a historic shift, it did not bring immediate stability. In the aftermath, Bangladesh entered a fragile transition marked by political uncertainty and weakened institutions. Groups that had united during the protests soon fragmented. Youth and student factions split over strategy and ideology, while Islamist groups moved to expand their influence amid the power vacuum. At the same time, remnants of older political parties attempted to reorganize and reclaim relevance. As a result, the post-uprising period has been defined by continued unrest, shifting alliances, and unresolved tensions, with a stable political order yet to fully emerge. Interim government and election tensions. The interim government, led by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus, is preparing to hold national elections scheduled for the 12th of February 2026. However, the process has generated significant political tension and public uncertainty. Opposition leaders, including BNP figure Tariq Rahman, have expressed strong dissatisfaction with both the timing and the proposed framework of the elections. Critics argue that the current roadmap does not guarantee a level playing field or sufficient political inclusiveness. There is also controversy surrounding the potential role of previously banned parties, particularly the Awami League, as well as broader concerns about fair political representation during the transition period. These unresolved disputes have contributed to renewed protests, shifting political alliances, and growing doubts about whether the upcoming election can deliver stability and public confidence. Death of a youth leader. In mid-December 2025, Sharif Osman Hadi, a well-known protest leader, was killed, sparking a new wave of unrest across Bangladesh. His death triggered large demonstrations in Dhaka and several other cities, with strong participation from youth and student groups who viewed him as a key symbol of the movement. The protests quickly escalated, with clashes reported between demonstrators and security forces. Incidents of vandalism and destruction of public and private property were recorded in multiple locations. Tensions deepened further following attacks on media offices, raising concerns about press freedom and public safety. Additionally, the emergence of anti-India slogans during demonstrations added a regional dimension to the unrest, complicating an already volatile political environment. Diplomatic fallout and regional impact. The ongoing violence in Bangladesh has begun to affect its diplomatic relations, particularly with neighboring India. Amid rising unrest, Bangladeshi authorities suspended certain Indian visa services, citing security and administrative concerns during the crisis. At the same time, the situation has had cross-border repercussions. Protests linked to developments in Bangladesh have taken place in several Indian cities, including demonstrations and clashes outside Bangladeshi diplomatic missions. These incidents have increased political and diplomatic sensitivity between the two countries. While neither side has taken steps toward direct confrontation, the unrest has added strain to bilateral relations and heightened regional tensions. The developments underscore how internal instability in Bangladesh is now producing wider diplomatic and regional consequences. Major forms of unrest. Bangladesh has experienced several forms of unrest over the past year, with street protests remaining the most visible. Demonstrations have occurred frequently, particularly in Dhaka, and have at times escalated into violent clashes with police and paramilitary forces. Alongside protests, political violence has increased sharply. Data from civic monitoring groups indicates a significant rise in factional fighting and mass demonstrations, resulting in over 100 deaths and thousands of injuries nationwide during the past year. There have also been targeted attacks linked to the unrest. Media organizations, religious minorities, and government institutions have been affected, raising serious concerns about press freedom, public safety, and social cohesion. Together, these developments reflect the depth and complexity of Bangladesh's current instability. Bangladesh is currently in a fragile transitional phase following major political upheaval. In 2024, a student-led uprising brought an end to a long-standing government, fundamentally reshaping the country's political landscape. Since then, an interim administration has been tasked with managing constitutional reforms while preparing the country for national elections. However, the transition has proven difficult. Competing pressures from youth and student groups, opposition political parties, Islamist organizations, and elements of civil society have created conflicting demands and priorities. Rather than moving toward consensus, these divisions have contributed to continued protests, political tension, and uncertainty. As a result, Bangladesh remains caught between dismantling the old political order and establishing a stable and broadly accepted new one. What happens next for Venezuela? Venezuela is entering one of the most dangerous and unpredictable moments in its modern history. With reports confirming the capture of President Nicolás Maduro, the political system that ruled the country for more than a decade has suddenly lost its center of gravity. For years, power in Venezuela revolved around a single figure, backed by the military, sustained by oil wealth, and enforced through fear. Now that structure has collapsed. The question is no longer whether Venezuela will change, but what kind of change lies ahead. Will this moment open the door to democracy? Will the military tighten its grip? Or will the country descend into chaos? To understand what comes next, we must first understand how Venezuela was broken and why this moment is so explosive. How did Venezuela get here? To understand what happens next, we need to understand how Venezuela reached this point. Nicolás Maduro rose to power after the death of Hugo Chavez, inheriting a system built on centralized authority, oil dependence, and strong military loyalty. Over time, Maduro consolidated power by weakening democratic institutions, sidelining opposition leaders, and relying heavily on the armed forces and security agencies. As Venezuela's economy collapsed, triggered by mismanagement, falling oil prices, corruption, and international sanctions, millions fled the country. Inflation soared, food and medicine became scarce, and public trust in the government eroded. Despite protests, disputed elections, and international pressure, Maduro remained in power. Until now. His capture marks the first real break in Venezuela's long-standing political deadlock. A sudden power vacuum. Maduro's removal does not mean Venezuela will become stable right away. Instead, it creates a dangerous power vacuum. The country's system was not built to work without a strong leader at the top. Important institutions like the courts, election bodies, and security forces were loyal to Maduro, not independent. Now there is no clear leader to take charge. Because of this, different political groups, military leaders, or factions may try to grab power at the same time. History shows that such situations often lead to chaos, conflict, or even violence. Government work may slow down, basic services may suffer, and people may feel more fear and uncertainty. Protests or clashes could increase as groups compete for control. The next few days and weeks will be very important, as they will decide whether Venezuela moves toward peace and stability or falls into deeper unrest. Oil at the center of the crisis. Oil is Venezuela's most important resource and the main source of money for the country. When there is political uncertainty, oil production and exports can be quickly affected. Delays, poor management, or conflict can reduce how much oil is produced and sold. Control over oil fields, refineries, and export routes may become a struggle as different groups try to gain power and access to oil income. Leaders may tighten control over the oil industry, saying it is necessary to protect national interests and keep money coming in. While this may prevent a sudden breakdown, it often leads to corruption, bad decisions, and less investment. Over time, oil production can fall even more. For ordinary Venezuelans, problems in the oil sector mean fewer dollars for the economy, less government spending, and weaker public services like healthcare, electricity, and transport. U.S. sanctions and the economic strangling of Venezuela's oil industry. The United States did not attack Venezuela's oil sector with bombs or soldiers, but through strong economic pressure. Over the years, the U.S. imposed heavy sanctions on Venezuela's oil industry, which is the country's main source of income. These sanctions limited Venezuela's ability to sell oil on the global market and blocked access to U.S. refineries, technology, and financial systems. American companies were banned from doing business with Venezuela's state oil company, PDVSA, making it harder to maintain equipment and produce oil. The U.S. also restricted oil payments, freezing assets, and stopping dollar transactions. As a result, oil production dropped sharply, exports declined, and government revenue fell. Supporters of the sanctions say they were meant to pressure the government to restore democracy. Critics argue they hurt ordinary people by weakening the economy, reducing public services, and increasing shortages. Overall, U.S. actions deeply affected Venezuela's oil sector and economic stability. The currency under pressure. Venezuela's currency is already very weak after many years of high inflation and poor management. People have lost trust in it, and prices change quickly. Political instability can make this problem even worse. When there is uncertainty, the value of the currency can fall fast, causing prices of food, fuel, and basic goods to rise even more. To stop this, the government may bring in emergency rules, such as strict controls on buying foreign currency or limits on cash use. While these steps may seem helpful at first, they often create new problems. Shortages can increase, and illegal markets may grow as people look for other ways to survive. For ordinary citizens, this situation means higher living costs, lower wages in real terms, and difficulty saving money. Everyday life becomes stressful as families struggle to afford basic needs and plan for the future. The role of the international community. The international community is closely watching what happens in Venezuela. Major countries such as the United States, Brazil, Colombia, and members of the European Union can strongly influence the country's future. Whether they accept or reject a new government will affect Venezuela's political path and economic recovery. Global organizations may try to support a peaceful solution by encouraging talks between rival groups, providing humanitarian aid, and helping to organize fair elections. They may also offer to reduce sanctions if real political and economic reforms are made. However, foreign involvement is not always helpful. Strong outside pressure can create anger and increase nationalist feelings inside the country. On the other hand, weak or delayed action may allow violence and instability to spread. Finding the right balance will be critical. Careful international support, focused on peace and stability, could help Venezuela move forward without worsening tensions or creating new problems. Venezuela is at a very important turning point. The capture of Maduro could open the door to democracy and positive change, or it could lead to a new and serious crisis. What happens next depends on the choices made by those in power right now. These decisions will affect the country for many years to come. If leaders act wisely and put the people first, Venezuela may slowly move toward stability and recovery. If they make mistakes or focus only on control, the situation could worsen. One thing is clear: this is a defining moment for the nation. Venezuela's future is being shaped right now, and people around the world are closely watching to see which path the country will take.